The champagne bubbles rose lazily in my glass as I watched my wife accept congratulations from another board member. Nira had become a CEO almost overnight, and everyone wanted to shake her hand. The restaurant buzzed with expensive suits and practiced smiles. I sat at the corner of our table, nursing my drink and watching the show. After 15 years of marriage, I recognized the performance. The gracious nods, the humble acceptance of praise, the way she positioned herself to catch the light from the chandelier above. Everything calculated. "Soren, you must be so proud," said Margaret from accounting, leaning over with wine-flushed cheeks. "Your wife is going places." "She certainly is," I replied, taking another sip. The whiskey burned, but not as much as watching Reed Morrow slide his chair closer to Nira's. Reed was everything I wasn't. Tall where I was average, polished where I was rough around the edges, silver-tongued where I preferred silence. He'd joined the company 6 months ago as Chief Operating Officer, bringing what Nira called fresh perspective and what I called trouble. The way he looked at my wife wasn't professional. The way she looked back confirmed my suspicions. "The real credit goes to our incredible team," Nira was saying to the gathered crowd. "Especially Reed, whose strategic vision transformed our entire approach." Reed stood, straightening his $1,000 suit. "Thank you, Nira. Though I have to say, success requires leaving behind what no longer serves us. Unnecessary baggage, if you will." His eyes found mine across the table. The message was clear. The applause died down, and conversations resumed. Reed settled back into his chair, leaning toward me with a smile that never reached his eyes. "Soren, isn't it?" he said, though we'd met a dozen times. "I've been meaning to ask, what exactly do you do these days?" "Construction," I said simply. "Renovation work, mostly." "Ah." The single syllable carried volumes. "How? Honest. Manual labor has its place, I suppose." Nira laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Reed, don't be mean. Soren's very good with his hands." The condescension in her voice hit harder than Reed's obvious disdain. This was my wife, the woman I'd supported through business school, through her first failed startup, through every setback and small victory that led to this moment. "I was wondering," Reed continued, swirling his wine, "when are you finally going to disappear? I mean, Nira's clearly the future here. You're just—" He paused, pretending to search for words. "Well, you're just the check that bounced." The table went quiet. Margaret's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. The marketing director suddenly found his phone fascinating. Even the waiters seemed to sense the tension. I looked at Reed's smug face, then at Nira's carefully neutral expression. She wasn't going to defend me. She wasn't even going to acknowledge what had just happened. I finished my whiskey in one swallow and stood up. The chair scraped against the marble floor, the sound echoing in the sudden silence. "Enjoy your celebration," I said to no one in particular. I walked out without saying goodbye, leaving behind the laughter that erupted the moment the door closed behind me. The drive home took 20 minutes through the city's gentrifying downtown, past the gleaming office towers and trendy restaurants, into the older neighborhoods where houses like ours sat on tree-lined streets. Our home, though I was beginning to wonder if I could still call it that. Inside, the silence felt different than usual, heavier. The living room still smelled like Nira's expensive perfume and Reed's cologne from their earlier strategy session. I'd learned not to ask what they strategized about for 3 hours behind closed doors. I went to my workshop in the basement, a refuge of sawdust and honest tools. Everything here made sense. Measure twice, cut once. If something was broken, you fixed it or replaced it. Simple. But some things couldn't be fixed with sandpaper and wood glue. I pulled out an old filing cabinet I kept for tax records, something Nira had asked me to handle years ago when she was too busy building her empire. Inside the bottom drawer was a manila folder marked Business Early Years. I hadn't looked at these papers in years, but I remembered what was in there. Bank statements from 2018 and 2019, when Nira's first company was struggling. Wire transfer confirmations from my personal account to hers. A signed loan agreement where she promised to pay me back when the business turned profitable. The numbers told a story. $43,000 in the first year alone. Another $68,000 the second year. Money I'd earned working double shifts on construction sites, renovating houses for wealthy clients who looked at me the same way Reed did. Every early payment for her company had come from my account. The business was built while I was working 2 jobs, coming home covered in drywall dust and paint, too tired to notice how she'd stopped saying thank you. There were emails, too. Printed copies of messages where she'd written things like, "You're saving the company, Soren," and "I couldn't do this without your support." The gratitude felt genuine then, when she was desperate and I was her only lifeline. I spread the documents across my workbench like blueprints for a house I'd never gotten to live in. The foundation I'd paid for, the walls I'd supported, the roof that now sheltered her and Reed while I stood outside in the rain. My phone buzzed with a text from Nira. "Where did you go? Reed was just joking around." I turned the phone face down and kept reading. Dale Harris had the kind of office that inspired confidence through sheer stubbornness. Faded law books lined the walls, and his desk bore the scars of 30 years handling cases that bigger firms wouldn't touch. He was exactly what I needed, a lawyer who understood that sometimes the little guy deserved to win. "So," Dale said, adjusting his reading glasses as he reviewed my documents, "your wife used your money to build her company, signed agreements acknowledging the debt, and now she's celebrating with her new boyfriend while treating you like hired help. That about covers it." He leaned back in his chair, which creaked ominously. "Soren, I've seen a lot of marriage cases, but this one's particularly ugly. She's not just leaving you, she's erasing you. Can we do something about it?" Dale smiled, and I understood why opposing counsel probably had nightmares about that expression. "Oh, we can definitely do something about it. The question is how far you want to take this." I thought about Reed's smirk, about the way Nira had laughed when he insulted me, about 15 years of marriage reduced to a punchline at a dinner party. "All the way," I said. Dale spent the next hour explaining the legal landscape. Partnership claims, unjust enrichment, breach of contract. The words washed over me like technical specifications for a complicated renovation project. The details mattered, but the goal was simple: tear down what they'd built on my foundation. "I'll file a claim for ownership interest," Dale said, making notes on a yellow legal pad. "With the documentation you've provided, we have a strong case for significant equity in the company. The loan agreements alone establish your financial contribution." "What happens then?" "We request an immediate asset freeze pending investigation. The court will want to examine all company finances to determine your rightful share. During that process..." He paused, savoring the moment. "Well, let's just say it becomes very difficult to operate a business when your accounts are frozen." I liked the sound of that. "There's something else," Dale continued. "If we can prove she deliberately concealed assets or misrepresented the company's founding during divorce proceedings, which this essentially is, we might be looking at fraud charges." "How long will this take?" "The initial filing? I can have papers ready by tomorrow morning. Service of process usually takes a few days, depending on how hard they try to avoid it." I thought about Nira's schedule, her predictable routines. She has board meetings every Tuesday at 10, conference room on the 32nd floor of the Meridian building. Dale's grin widened. "Public service during a board meeting. I like your style, Soren." We spent another hour going through details, preparing documents, building what Dale called an airtight case. I signed papers that would change everything, authorized actions that would bring Nira's carefully constructed world crashing down. Walking out of Dale's office, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Purpose. For too long, I'd been reacting to Nira's moves, accepting her version of our story. Now I was taking action. My phone rang as I reached my truck. Nira's name appeared on the screen. "Where have you been all morning?" she asked without preamble. "I called the house 3 times. Running errands." "What kind of errands? We need to talk about last night. Reed feels terrible about what he said." "I bet he did. Nothing to discuss." "Soren, don't be like this. You know how important this transition period is for the company. Everyone's under a lot of stress." "Seems like Reed's handling the stress just fine." Silence stretched between us. When Nira spoke again, her voice had shifted to the tone she used with difficult clients. "I don't know what you think you saw, but Reed and I are colleagues. Nothing more." "Right. I'm serious, Soren. You're being paranoid." The word hit like a slap. Paranoid. As if my eyes and ears couldn't be trusted. As if the evidence of my own senses was somehow unreliable. "I have to go," I said. "We're not finished talking about this." "Yeah, we are." I hung up and drove home through the midday traffic, past the construction sites where crews were building new condos for people like Reed. People who'd never worked with their hands, but somehow deserved more than those who did. At home, I found Nira's laptop open on the kitchen counter. She'd left in a hurry that morning, forgetting to close it. The screen showed her email inbox, and I couldn't help but notice several messages from Reed with subject lines like, "Last night was amazing, and can't wait for tonight." I didn't read them. I didn't need to. The subject lines told me everything I needed to know about my wife's colleague. Instead, I went back to my workshop and pulled out more files. If Dale needed documentation, I'd give him documentation. Every receipt, every bank statement, every piece of paper that proved my contribution to Nira's empire. The work was methodical, satisfying in the way that good construction always was. Lay the foundation, frame the structure, add the details that would make it solid. By evening, I had 3 boxes of evidence ready for Dale's review. Nira came home late, after 9 o'clock. I heard her heels on the hardwood floor above, heard her talking on the phone in the living room. "No, Reed, he's just going through something," she was saying. "Men his age sometimes have these episodes when they feel left behind." Episodes, as if my legitimate grievances were symptoms of some psychological condition. "He'll come around," she continued. "He always does. Soren's not the type to make waves." I smiled in the darkness of my workshop. She was about to learn how wrong she was about that. Tuesday morning arrived gray and drizzling, the kind of weather that made the city look tired. I sat in my truck across from the Meridian building, watching important people hurry through the revolving doors with their briefcases and umbrellas. At exactly 9:45, I saw the process server enter the lobby. Dale had hired someone who looked like a delivery driver, baseball cap, clipboard, the kind of person who became invisible in corporate environments. My phone buzzed with a text from Dale. "Papers filed, asset freeze request submitted. Your wife's about to have a very bad day." I waited. The 32nd floor of the Meridian building housed the executive offices of Pinnacle Solutions, the company Nira had built with my money. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered views of the city skyline, and the conference room where she held court every Tuesday was visible from the street if you knew where to look. At 10:15, my phone rang. "Soren, what the hell have you done?" Nira's voice was shaking with rage and something else. Fear. "I don't know what you mean." "Don't play stupid with me. A process server just interrupted my board meeting. There's a lawsuit, something about ownership claims and asset freezes. My lawyer says our accounts are frozen pending investigation." I let the silence stretch. In the background, I could hear voices, urgent conversations, the sound of panic. "Soren, answer me." I presented evidence showing the business had been launched with my money. Turns out, that matters in court. "You can't be serious. That money was a gift, not a loan. You can't just decide 15 years later that you want it back. I have the loan agreements, Nira. Your signature on documents acknowledging the debt. Emails where you thanked me for saving the company. Want me to read them to your board? More silence. When she spoke again, her voice was different, smaller, desperate. What do you want? Justice. That's not an answer. You want money? Fine, I'll write you a check today. We can settle this quietly. With what money? I thought your accounts were frozen. I heard Reed's voice in the background asking what was happening. Nira's response was muffled, but I caught the words legal problem and temporary setback. Soren, please, let's handle this like adults. Come to the office and we'll work something out. I don't think so. My lawyer says I should let the courts handle it from here. Your lawyer? You hired a lawyer? The surprise in her voice was almost insulting, as if the idea of me taking professional action was inconceivable. Dale Harris, maybe you've heard of him. He specializes in cases where people get taken advantage of by their spouses. This is insane. You're destroying everything we built together. Everything I built. You just took credit for it. The call ended with the harsh sound of her hanging up. I sat in my truck for another few minutes, watching the windows of the 32nd floor, imagining the chaos unfolding in that pristine conference room. By noon, the story was spreading through the business community. Dale had been smart about the timing, filing during peak business hours, when news traveled fast through the network of lawyers, accountants, and executives who made the city's economy function. My phone rang again. This time, it was Reed. Listen, you piece of garbage, he started, his polished demeanor completely gone. I don't know what game you think you're playing, but it ends now. Is that a threat? It's a promise. You're messing with people who have resources, connections. You think some small-time lawyer can take us down? You're delusional. We'll see. Nira told me about your little contribution to the company. So what? You gave your wife some money years ago. That doesn't make you a partner. The courts will decide that. The courts, Reed laughed bitterly. You know what courts care about? Evidence, documentation, professional testimony, not the whining of some washed-up construction worker who can't accept that his wife outgrew him. I thought about the 3 boxes of evidence sitting in Dale's office. Bank statements, loan agreements, email printouts, financial records spanning 5 years, professional testimony from accountants who could trace every dollar from my account to Nira's company. You're right about evidence, I said. That's exactly what courts care about. The line went quiet. When Reed spoke again, his voice had lost some of its confidence. What do you really want, Soren? Money? A settlement? Name your price. I want what's mine. Which is what exactly? Everything. I hung up and drove home, where I found 3 messages on my answering machine. The first was from Nira's lawyer, requesting a meeting to discuss a mutually beneficial resolution. The second was from the company's chief financial officer, asking about documentation requirements for the asset review. The third was from a reporter at the Business Journal, wanting to know about the ownership dispute at Pinnacle Solutions. Word was spreading faster than I'd expected. In the business world, news of frozen assets and ownership disputes traveled at light speed. Competitors would smell weakness, investors would get nervous, clients would start looking for alternatives. Dale called that evening with an update. The asset freeze is in effect, he said. They can't access company accounts, can't make major expenditures, can't pay executive bonuses. Everything's locked down until the court determines your ownership percentage. How long will that take? Could be weeks, could be months. Depends on how cooperative they are with discovery. If they fight it, we'll need forensic accountants to trace every transaction. If they want to settle. He paused. Well, that could happen much faster. What are the chances they'll fight? Honestly, low. Fighting means opening their books completely, submitting to depositions, having their business practices examined under a microscope. Most companies would rather settle than go through that process. I thought about Reed's threats, about Nira's panic, about the carefully constructed facade of success that was already beginning to crack. What if they try something else? Pressure tactics, intimidation. Then we document everything and add it to the case. Harassment, interference with legal proceedings. Judges don't like that kind of behavior. That night, I sat in my workshop surrounded by the tools and materials of honest work. Hammers and saws, levels and measuring tapes. Everything needed to build something solid and lasting. Outside, it was still raining. But for the first time in months, I was looking forward to tomorrow. The first crack in Nira's perfect world appeared in the business section of the morning paper. Just a small item, buried on page 3. Pinnacle Solutions faces ownership dispute, assets frozen pending legal review. I read it over coffee in my kitchen, savoring every word. The reporter had done his homework, mentioning the significant financial contributions made by estranged spouse Soren and the complex legal questions surrounding company ownership. By the time I finished my second cup, my phone was ringing. "Did you see the paper?" It was my daughter Mara calling from college. Her voice carried a mix of confusion and accusation that I'd been expecting. "I saw it." "Dad, what's going on? Mom called me crying last night. She says you're trying to destroy her company." I set down my coffee cup and chose my words carefully. Mara was 20 years old, smart as a whip, but she'd grown up seeing Nira as the successful parent and me as the reliable but unremarkable father who fixed things around the house. "I'm claiming what's legally mine, sweetheart. The company was built with my money. But Mom earned everything she has. She worked so hard to get where she is. With my financial support. Money I earned working construction while she went to business school, while she started her first company, while she built what became Pinnacle Solutions." Silence on the other end. I could picture Mara in her dorm room, trying to reconcile the story she'd always believed with this new information. "Why now?" she finally asked. "Why are you doing this now?" I thought about Reed's sneer, about being told to disappear, about watching my wife laugh while another man insulted me. Because I finally realized that being patient and supportive was being interpreted as being weak and disposable. "Dad, I love you, Mara. This isn't about you. But your mother made choices, and choices have consequences." After she hung up, I sat in the quiet kitchen and wondered if I was doing the right thing. Divorce was one thing. Plenty of marriages ended without destroying anyone. But what I was doing went beyond divorce. I was dismantling the foundation of Nira's professional life, exposing the gap between her public success story and the private reality of how that success was funded. The doubt lasted about 30 seconds until I remembered Reed asking when I was going to disappear. My phone buzzed with a text from Dale. "Meeting requested by opposing counsel, 2 p.m. today. You interested?" I texted back, "What kind of meeting?" "Settlement discussion. They want to make this go away." "I'll be there." Dale's office felt different that afternoon. The same faded law books, the same scarred desk, but now there was an energy in the air that hadn't been there before. The energy of a case that was going well. "They're scared," Dale said as we waited for Nira's lawyer to arrive. "Asset freezes are public record. Their clients will see it, their bank will see it, and their competitors will sense an opportunity." "What do you think they'll offer?" "Money, probably. A cash settlement to make you go away quietly. The question is whether you want money or justice." Before I could answer, Dale's secretary announced the arrival of Richard Blackwood from Blackwood, Sterling & Associates. The name alone probably cost more per hour than I made in a week. Blackwood was exactly what Central Casting would order for a corporate lawyer. Silver hair, expensive suit, briefcase that cost more than most people's cars. He shook hands with professional courtesy that didn't quite mask his disdain for the surroundings. "Gentlemen," he said, settling into a chair that creaked under his weight, "I think we can resolve this matter quickly and amicably." "I'm listening," Dale replied. "My client is prepared to offer a settlement of $200,000 in exchange for Mr. Valden dropping all claims and signing a comprehensive non-disclosure agreement." I almost laughed. $200,000. Less than what I'd contributed in the first 2 years alone, and a fraction of what the company was worth now. "That's insulting," Dale said before I could respond. "It's generous," Blackwood countered. "Mr. Valden made gifts to his wife during their marriage. Attempting to recharacterize those gifts as loans years later is legally questionable at best. We have signed loan agreements. Agreements that could be interpreted as formalities between spouses, not binding contracts." Dale leaned back in his chair and smiled. "Mr. Blackwood, have you actually reviewed the documentation we've provided? I've seen enough to know that this case isn't as strong as you believe." "Then you haven't seen the email from 2019 where Mrs. Valden wrote, and I quote, 'The loan from Soren saved the company. I promise to pay him back as soon as we're profitable.' Would you like me to provide the metadata showing when it was sent and from which device?" Blackwood's confidence flickered. Emails between spouses often contain casual language that shouldn't be taken literally. Or the bank records showing that every major capital injection into the company came from Mr. Valden's personal account, often immediately after he'd received payment for construction projects. The flicker became a frown. Or the business plan Mrs. Valden submitted to investors in 2020, which specifically mentioned initial funding provided by spouse as a key factor in the company's stability. Blackwood opened his briefcase and pulled out a legal pad, buying time to think. "What does your client want?" he asked finally. 51% ownership of Pinnacle Solutions," I said, "plus back payment on the loans with interest." "Absolutely not." "Then we'll see you in court." Blackwood spent the next 20 minutes explaining why my demands were unreasonable, why the case would take years to resolve, why I should accept the settlement and move on with my life. His arguments were polished and professional, but underneath the legal language was a simple message: take the money and disappear. Just like Reed had said. "I need to discuss this with my client," Blackwood said finally. "Of course," Dale replied. "We'll wait to hear from you." After Blackwood left, Dale and I sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes. "You know," Dale said eventually, "most people would take the money." "I'm not most people." "No, you're not. Question is, are you prepared for what comes next? They're going to fight dirty now. Personal attacks, character assassination, anything to discredit you. Let them try." My phone rang as I was driving home, Nira's name on the screen. $200,000, Soren. That's more money than you've seen in your entire life. "Is it?" "Take the deal, please. This is destroying everything I've worked for." "Everything we worked for. The difference is, I actually did the work." "That's not fair, and you know it." "Fair? You want to talk about fair? How about 15 years of supporting your dreams while you treated me like hired help? How about watching you celebrate your success with another man while pretending I don't exist? Reed has nothing to do with this. Reed has everything to do with this. He's the one who told me to disappear, remember? Well, congratulations. I'm disappearing, and I'm taking my half of the company with me." The call ended with another harsh click, but this time, I was the one who hung up. 3 weeks after the asset freeze began, Pinnacle Solutions was hemorrhaging clients. Word had spread through the business community that the company was facing a major ownership dispute, and corporate clients didn't like uncertainty. 2 major contracts had been canceled, and 3 others were under review. I learned this from the Business Journal's follow-up article, which painted a picture of a company in crisis. The reporter had interviewed former employees who spoke anonymously about leadership chaos and unclear ownership structure. Someone had leaked the information that Morrow was living in Nira's house, adding a personal scandal angle to the business story. Dale called that morning with news. They want another meeting. This time, they're talking about a much larger settlement. How much larger? 7 figures. Plus they're offering to buy out your ownership claim for fair market value, which their accountants estimate at around $3 million. I sat in my truck outside a job site, watching my crew install new windows in a house that would sell for $500,000. Honest work, but the kind of money Dale was talking about would change everything. What's the catch? Non-disclosure agreement, non-compete clause, and you have to relocate outside the state within 6 months. They want to exile me. Essentially, yes. They're willing to pay handsomely for it, but they want you gone. I thought about Mara, about the life I'd built in this city, about running away from the problem instead of solving it. Set up the meeting, I said. This time, Nira came with her lawyer. I hadn't seen her in person since the night she'd celebrated her promotion, and the change was striking. The confident CEO had been replaced by someone who looked tired, stressed, older than her 42 years. She sat across from me in Dale's conference room, avoiding eye contact while Blackwood outlined their new offer. The numbers were impressive. Enough money to retire comfortably, to start over somewhere else, to disappear just like Reed had suggested. It's a generous offer, Blackwood concluded. More than generous, considering the speculative nature of your claims. Speculative? Dale laughed. Your client's company is losing clients daily because of this dispute. That seems pretty concrete to me. Temporary setbacks, Blackwood said smoothly. The business will recover once this matter is resolved. Maybe, Dale said. Or maybe the damage is permanent. Reputation matters in the corporate world, doesn't it, Mrs. Valden? Nira spoke for the first time since entering the room. Soren, please, just take the money and let me rebuild. You'll be set for life. Where's Reed? I asked. What? Reed Morrow, your business partner. Where is he? Nira's face flushed. He's dealing with other matters. He left, didn't he? When the company started losing clients, when the scandal broke, he disappeared. The flush deepened. Reed felt it was best if he stepped away temporarily until this situation resolves. Temporarily, I repeated. Just like my marriage was temporarily inconvenient for your career plans. That's not how it was. Isn't it? You used my money to build a company, then used that company to attract a new man, then planned to use that man to replace me entirely. Very efficient. Blackwood cleared his throat. Mr. Valden, let's focus on the settlement terms. This offer won't remain open indefinitely. I looked at Nira, really looked at her for the first time in months. The woman I'd married, supported, believed in. The woman who'd laughed when another man told me to disappear. I have a counteroffer, I said. We're listening, Blackwood replied. 60% ownership of Pinnacle Solutions. Nira can keep 40% and continue as CEO, but all major decisions require my approval. Reed Morrow is permanently banned from any involvement with the company. No non-disclosure agreement, no relocation requirement. Absolutely not, Blackwood said immediately. Then we go to trial. Soren, Nira said quietly, you don't understand business. You can't just take over a company and expect it to run itself. You're right. I don't understand business the way you do. I understand work. I understand earning what you have instead of taking credit for what others built. I never took credit. Every interview you've given, every profile written about you, every speech you've made about your entrepreneurial journey, did any of them mention that the company was funded by your husband's construction work? Silence. Did any of them mention that while you were networking and strategizing, I was working 60-hour weeks to keep money flowing into your dream? More silence. Did any of them mention that the foundation of your success was built by someone you considered disposable? Nira's eyes filled with tears, but I felt no satisfaction in seeing them. This wasn't about making her cry. This was about making her understand. "The offer stands," I said, standing up. 60%, or we go to trial and let a judge decide how to split everything. Blackwood started to object, but Nira held up a hand to stop him. "I need time to think," she said. "You have 48 hours," Dale replied. "After that, we proceed with full litigation." Outside Dale's office, the afternoon sun felt warmer than it had in weeks. My phone buzzed with a text from Mara. "Dad, can we talk? I think I understand now." I smiled and texted back, "Call me tonight, sweetheart." For the first time in months, I felt like I was building something instead of watching it get torn down. The foundation was solid, the structure was sound, and the finish work was almost complete. Tomorrow, I'd find out if Nira was ready to live in the house that my money had built. The call came at 6 a.m. on Thursday morning. Dale's voice was alert, despite the early hour. "They accepted," he said. 60% ownership. Reed Morrow banned from the company. Nira remains as CEO subject to your approval on major decisions. I sat up in bed, fully awake now. "Just like that?" "Not quite. They want one modification. Nira keeps her current salary and benefits, and you can't fire her without cause for 2 years. What constitutes cause? Breach of fiduciary duty, fraud, or gross negligence. Standard corporate language. I thought about it. Nira was good at running companies, even if she was terrible at acknowledging how those companies got started. Keeping her as CEO made business sense. "Agreed," I said. "Congratulations, Soren. You're about to become majority owner of a multi-million-dollar company." After Dale hung up, I sat in the quiet of my bedroom and tried to process what had just happened. 6 months ago, I'd been a construction worker, married to an ambitious woman. Now I was a business owner with controlling interest in the company that had been built with my money. The irony wasn't lost on me. Reed had asked when I was going to disappear, but he was the one who'd vanished when things got difficult. Nira had treated me like an embarrassment, but now she worked for me. My phone rang again. This time it was Nira. "I hope you're satisfied," she said, without preamble. "I'm satisfied with justice." "Justice? You've destroyed everything I built. I've claimed what was always mine. There's a difference. So what happens now? You're going to show up at board meetings in work boots and tell me how to run my company?" "Our company. And yes, I'll be attending board meetings, though I'll probably wear actual shoes." Silence stretched between us. When Nira spoke again, her voice was different, smaller, more vulnerable than I'd heard it in years. "I never meant for it to happen this way, Soren. With Reed, with the company, with us. But it did happen this way. I know. I got caught up in the success, in the recognition. It felt good to be seen as important. You were always important. You just decided I wasn't. That's not true. Isn't it? When was the last time you introduced me as your husband instead of just Soren? When was the last time you mentioned my contribution to the company in public? When was the last time you acted like we were partners instead of you being the star and me being the stagehand?" More silence. "Reed made me feel like I deserved more," she said finally. "You did deserve more. We both did. But you can't build more by tearing down what you already have. So where does this leave us?" I looked around the bedroom we'd shared for 15 years, at the photos on the dresser showing happier times, at the life we'd built before ambition and ego had poisoned everything. "I don't know," I said honestly. "But I know where it leaves the company. We're going to run it the right way, honestly, with respect for everyone who contributes to its success." "And Reed?" "Reed is your problem to solve, but he's not welcome in our business." After the call ended, I got dressed and drove to the Pinnacle Solutions office. It felt strange walking through the lobby as an owner instead of a visitor, taking the elevator to the 32nd floor where I'd never been welcome before. Nira was waiting in the conference room with a stack of documents and an expression I couldn't read. "These are the ownership transfer papers," she said. "And these are the current financial statements. And these are the contracts we need to review for the Henderson project." I sat down across from her and started reading. The numbers were impressive. The company was profitable, growing, well-positioned for future expansion. My money had been invested wisely, even if my contribution had been forgotten. "The Henderson project is our biggest client," Nira explained. "They're considering expanding their contract, but they want assurance about company stability." "What kind of assurance?" "A meeting with senior leadership. They want to know that the ownership dispute won't affect service delivery." "When?" "Tomorrow afternoon. It's important, Soren. This contract could double our revenue." I looked at the woman across from me. Brilliant, driven, flawed, familiar. The woman I'd married, supported, and lost to her own ambition. "Then we better not mess it up," I said. The next day, I wore my best suit to the Henderson meeting. Not as expensive as Reed's wardrobe had been, but respectable, professional. The Henderson executives were exactly what I'd expected: polished, cautious, concerned about stability. They asked pointed questions about the ownership change, about leadership continuity, about our ability to deliver on commitments. "Mr. Valden," the lead executive said, "you're new to the corporate world. How do we know you won't disrupt operations?" "Because I built this company," I said simply. "Not with presentations or strategies, but with actual money earned through actual work. I'm not interested in disrupting something I've invested 15 years of my life creating." "But you have no management experience." "I have construction experience. I know how to build things that last, how to manage budgets and timelines, how to deliver what I promise. Those skills translate." Nira spoke up. "Soren brings a practical perspective that complements our strategic vision. The combination of his operational insight and my business experience positions us perfectly for sustainable growth." It was the first time in years she'd spoken about us as a team. The meeting went well. By the end, Henderson had agreed to expand their contract and extend the partnership for 3 years. Walking back to the office, Nira and I found ourselves alone in the elevator for the first time since this whole process had started. "Thank you," she said quietly. "For what?" "For not destroying everything out of spite. You could have demanded I be fired, could have shut down the company entirely. Instead, you're trying to make it work. I told you from the beginning, this was about justice, not revenge." "What's the difference?" I thought about Reed's sneer, about being told to disappear, about 15 years of marriage reduced to a punchline. "Revenge is about making people pay for hurting you," I said. "Justice is about making sure they can't hurt you again." The elevator doors opened and we stepped into the offices of Pinnacle Solutions. Our company now, built on the foundation I'd provided and the vision she'd developed. It wasn't the ending either of us had planned, but it was the ending we'd earned. As I walked to what would be my new office, I thought about the tools in my workshop at home: hammers and saws, levels and measuring tapes, everything needed to build something solid and lasting. Some projects took longer than others. Some required tearing down what didn't work and rebuilding from a stronger foundation. But in the end, if you did the work right, you created something that would stand the test of time. The business was built while I was working 2 jobs. The foundation was mine. And now it was coming back, just like I'd always known it would.